Hi, this is Matt Baker. Since Halloween is just 2 days away, I thought I'd take the opportunity to talk about two spooky families, the Addams family and the Munsters. Of course, both of these families are fictional, but both are pretty well known. They've appeared in comics, TV shows, films, and even video games. Of the two families, the Addams family is probably the one that's more well known. There's an animated movie about them in theaters right now, and a Netflix series by Tim Burton is in the works. But even if you've never seen any of the shows or movies, you'll probably recognize this song. So originally, the Addams family were just cartoon characters that appeared from time to time in the New Yorker magazine, starting in 1938. Their last name comes from the man who drew them, Charles Addams. However, it was in 1964 that the members of the Addams family became hugely popular. That's when ABC produced a TV show based on the previously unnamed cartoon characters. Note that I'm primarily using images from that 1960s TV show on my family tree chart. The two central characters are Gomez Addams and his wife Morticia Addams, whose maiden name is Frump. Gomez is an eccentric billionaire who always wears a pinstripe suit and is usually smoking a cigar. His character falls into the Latin lover stereotype, which was common in Hollywood at the time. In the 1960s, he was portrayed by John Astin, and in the 90s by Raul Julia and Tim Curry. In the current animated movie, he's voiced by Oscar Isaac, and in the upcoming Netflix series, he'll be played by Luis Guzman. Of the two main characters, Morticia is the creepier one. She's supposed to be a witch and is therefore usually portrayed with long black hair, very pale skin, and a slim figure. But it's her weird behavior and the strange things that she says that really make her creepy. In the original show, she was portrayed by Carolyn Jones, and then in the 90s by Angelica Houston and Daryl Hannah. In the current movie, she's voiced by Charlize Theron, and in the upcoming Netflix series, she's going to be played by Catherine Zeta-Jones. The couple has two kids, Pugsley and Wednesday. Pugsley is a smart, chubby boy who always wears a striped shirt with shorts, whereas Wednesday is your typical goth girl, obsessed with death. The name Wednesday comes from the poem in which it is said that Wednesday's child is full of woe. In the 1998 movie, she was portrayed by Christina Ricci, and in the new Netflix series, she'll be played by Jenna Ortega. In fact, the new Netflix show, expected in 2022, is going to be called Wednesday, because Wednesday will be the main character. The two main older characters are Grandmama and Uncle Fester. In the original show, Grandmama was Gomez's mother, and Uncle Fester was Morticia's uncle. However, in more recent adaptations, Grandmama is portrayed as being Morticia's mother, and Uncle Fester is portrayed as Gomez's brother. But either way, Uncle Fester is always portrayed as a short, bald guy, and Grandmama as an old witch with messy gray hair. Note that in the original show, there was a separate character for Morticia's mother, named Hester Frump. Fester and Hester were siblings, hence their rhyming names. In the original show, Morticia also had a sister named Ophelia, who was her complete opposite, having blonde hair and a typical flower child personality. Both sisters were played by the same actress. The backstory is that Gomez was originally supposed to marry Ophelia, but then fell in love with the much stranger sister, Morticia, instead. Finally, there are several side characters who are very iconic as well. For example, there is Lurch, the gloomy Frankenstein-like butler, originally played by Ted Cassidy. There's also Cousin It, famous for his really long hair, with only a bowler hat and sunglasses, giving the impression of a face. Finally, there is Thing, a hand in a box that helps out by fetching the mail or lighting Gomez's cigar. Originally, the idea was that his appearance was so horrible that he could only ever show his hand. However, in later adaptations, Thing becomes disembodied and crawls around like a spider. Okay, so those are the main characters associated with the Addams family. Let's now turn our attention to the Munsters. As I mentioned earlier, the Addams family debuted on TV in 1964. Well, the Munsters also debuted on TV in 1964. But whereas the Addams family aired on the ABC network, the Munsters aired on NBC. Obviously, the two shows were in direct competition with each other, and to this day, some people still get the two families mixed up. The main couple in the Munsters show is Herman and Lily Munster. Herman was originally played by Fred Gwynne and is based on Frankenstein's monster from the Mary Shelley novel. His appearance is thus more similar to that of Lurch from the Addams family than that of Gomez. Like in the original Mary Shelley novel, he is said to have been created by the scientist Victor Frankenstein. He therefore has several quote-unquote brothers who were also created by the same scientist, now long dead. For example, Uncle Charlie, who looks exactly the same and is played by the same actor, but also Uncle Gilbert, who is based on the creature from the movie Creature from the Black Lagoon. On the other hand, Lily, played by Yvonne De Carlo, comes from the Dracula family. She has 2 white streaks in her otherwise long black hair. These were probably added in order to distinguish her from the competing character Morticia Addams. However, it's not just Lily and Morticia who are often confused. Both of them are somewhat similar to the earlier 1950s TV character Vampira, as well as the later 1980s character Elvira. However, both Vampira and Elvira were different in that they were primarily horror hosts. A horror host being someone who introduces horror-themed B-movies rather than someone who acts in their own TV show. On the Munsters, Lily's father, played by Al Lewis, is known as Grandpa. He's obviously a vampire, his full name being Sam Dracula. However, some of his progeny are actually werewolves rather than vampires, such as Lily's brother Lester and Lily and Herman's son Eddie. Finally, the show also features Marilyn Munster, who is Lily's niece. The joke is that the Munsters consider her to be the odd one, whereas she's actually the only normal character on the show. Originally, back in the 1960s, the Munsters actually received slightly higher ratings than the Addams Family show. However, over the decades, it was the Addams Family that developed into the more well-known brand. This is perhaps due to the fact that the Addams Family characters are, for the most part, unique creations, whereas the Munster characters are mostly based on stock characters from classic horror movies such as Count Dracula and Frankenstein. These characters are no longer copyrighted, so can be used by anyone. For example, the Hotel Transylvania franchise also has a Dracula, a Frankenstein, and a werewolf. Note, however, that the Hotel Transylvania depictions of Dracula and Frankenstein are slightly different. This is because while the classic horror characters are not copyrighted, certain ways of depicting them are. For example, the standard portrayal of Frankenstein with green skin, a red scar, and pins in his neck is owned by Universal Studios. The Munsters were able to use this because NBC and Universal are partners. However, Hotel Transylvania is produced by Sony. Therefore, its portrayal of Frankenstein is chubbier, without the pins. Okay, so that was a look at the family trees of the Addams family as well as the Munsters. Let me know in the comments which show you like best, which adaptation you like best, and which character or actor you like best. Thanks for watching and have a happy and safe Halloween.